There are, of course, those who do not want us to speak. Even now, orders are being shouted into telephones, and men with guns will soon be on their way. Because while the truncheon may be used in lieu of conversation, words will always retain their power. Words offer the means to meaning, and for those who will listen, the enunciation of truth. And the truth is, there is something terribly wrong, isn't there? But again, truth be told, if you're looking for the guilty, you need only look into a mirror.
If you are willing to listen, this is your subconscious speaking, and this is there something you have missed? I am here to remind you of something you already know, or be aware of something you didn't want to be true, or it makes you uncomfortable. See, we live in denial of our subconscious, the part of us that notice things you don't want to believe, or you deny because it's uncomfortable. The part of us that knows there's something wrong even when faced with niceties and platitudes. Our species has reached the allegro of our existence, a symphony that will never be played again in the same order. It will be either a modern renaissance or the complete destruction of thought and speech. We grope for the ignorance and rationalization that placates us, even in the face of the erosion of inalienable human rights through supremacy or greed, and we take up fictional rights on the basis of wishful thinking and self-interest. A gilded cage has descended upon our lives, and instead of defending our freedom, we have embraced its ideology and we demand nothing. Raising the question, do we deserve to survive? Should we fight our inevitable destruction at our own hands? As the hand of black men reach out in hate to strike the face of those white men who died to free them, to disrespect those who risk death and persecution, to see them have the right of education, and those who said Black Lives Matter in a time when they really didn't. To become the most privileged citizens in the most privileged country in the world, just to violate the human decency that their freedom was based upon, because of their lack of human agency and personal accountability. It is the responsibility of every man and woman to make humanity better by genetic diversity and abolishing racial lines. It is the fastest way to improve our biological future, and it is our differences that enhances us. It is our ideologies that can make us worse, our indifference to our freedoms being under hostile invasion that makes us weak, and it is racial supremacy that is as useful as extinction. Do you have the ethical courage to examine your beliefs instead of clinging to what you want to believe? To participate in your own destruction because somebody told you to believe something by faith and without evidence just because you want it to be true? Maybe to blame somebody else for your failures and lack of intellectual and moral fortitude. It takes great virtue and courage to not just ignore the trade of Africans by Africans to the trade market, but to stand against it under the threat of societal morbidity and loss of great profit by white abolitionists can only be described as exceptional. The slave trade still goes on to this very day in Africa and in the Middle East as it did thousands of years before. In reality, it was Africans and Arabs who invented slavery, and African Americans in their ignorance called their olive-skinned Islamic enslavers brothers. When Arabic cultures from Egypt to the Mediterranean enslaved the Goth, Picts, Uralic and Druid people without apology or reparations. Whole nations of white people that never took a slave, never dealt in slaves, never owned a slave, and never enslaved a single other individual. And this is staggering in light of the fact that no black civilization can say the same, making the transatlantic slave trade a cultural appropriation. Because I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I'm here to tell you what you need to know to make your own informed decisions. To extend understanding of topics in cooperation with you, to examine them under the eye of its own discipline and academic responsibilities. To demonstrate that all humans have transgressed and fallen short. No one is a victim, in the past, in the present, and in the future. We have seen a paradox developed in a system based upon the violation of trust and the violation of the innocent minds of our children by an education system filled with regressive liberal ideology, where agenda is more important than facts or instruction, where free speech and disagreement with the party line is hate speech, where the class element has more in common with Tiananmen Square than education. They get away with this because they know men are addicted to pussy and would go along with anything, even when it means pushing our history, our children's future, and reality under the bus, just for its approval. Even if that means saying the world is flat, and that all men are rapists, no matter how stupid that it is, or how contrary it is to reason. The Western education system is filled with feminist mental pedophiles. Like Wikipedia, where the sky is blue because of an invisible omnipotent patriarchy, where Gay Margate is about the harassment of irrelevant women that are without ethical compass, rather than a spotlight on your shameless propaganda. You know who you are and the falsehoods and revisionist history you teach. The fascist doctrine to place women into privileged status to get undeserved jobs and money they haven't worked for, and are incompetent at performing, at the expense of our safety and our children's safety. The true definition of equality is, the person who is the most qualified and worked the hardest gets the job, and this simple morality eludes you, further illustrating the reason why you cretins should not be in positions of power. The moral high ground is something not gauged by emotion but by knowledge, inquiry and the investigation of self, not others. Cheeky bastard believes in holding to account those in position, himself included, and those who disseminate lies for personal gain and adoration. This is why I support the 99%, the Anonymous, the MGTOW, Gay Margate, the MRA and the Truth, the ones who believe in truth over personal security, and to enlighten you to the fact that you all are fighting the same insidious entity, whether you realize it or not. You will find that it doesn't have to be intentional to be a lie, cogent to be a conspiracy, or that the truth is pretty. It is the stupidity of the people of the West to believe that white men are the instigators of all oppression, when it was black people who enslaved white people thousands of years before Europe existed as we know it. See, what most young women are not taught in their gender studies unit is that women had the vote before some men were allowed to vote. In the cruel reality of history, peasant and impoverished men weren't allowed to vote in colonial countries, and this is the same in most countries that have developed under the feudal system. In 1850 referred to as franchise, people living in Australia asked for the right to elect representatives. Chronologically, legislation allowing women to vote was approved before the male vote, and self-determination even later, making colonial women's suffrage a fabrication, that's right, a contrivance, just as fictional as Cook's discovery of the same continent. If you don't feel violated by that fact as a 21st century woman, then you really have no sensitivity to being violated by another woman, and to be intentionally used as a pawn to their benefit and exercise of power no better than Mussolini himself. They never tell you that the American suffragette leadership were people who only wanted rich women to vote and vehemently opposed black women getting the vote. This is something you need to find out yourself to believe, and will be shocked to find the first ever laws to protect women written down and survived was in the Code of Hammurabi, 1780 BC, outlines the right for a wife to take possession of her husband's property in full, in absence or death, without restrictions of rights. For all women to have the right to own property. which runs contrary to feminists' revisionist history. Also in 50 BC in Samaria, written in cuneiform, was found a tablet dedicated to law to protect women's rights, which was written and enforced by men, that is, 1,898 years, men advocated women's rights, before women did. The reality, that is, under feminist admission that the oppressed can't be the oppressors. By that reasoning, we have never had a real patriarchy civilization. We live in a meritocracy, and before that, a monarchy, where no man had a voice even though he was responsible for the defense of kingdom and the financial support of the lord he was enslaved by, and the women irreparably linked to him by blood or by contract. Men were the original slaves, and there's no abolition for them. It was male tears that built this world that you so egregiously take for granted, the ones that built your freedom and luxury, and supported your right to speak without public retribution. It is feminists and the liberal regressives who participate in victim shaming. This can be easily illustrated by having an Aboriginal ancestor, Irish slave, a Polish death camp survivor, a Pik ancestor, Ukrainian famine survivor. Which would make me a slave, a survivor, a victim, a non-European that refutes and contradicts privilege and its actual existence. But because I look relatively white, I must be a slave owner and of privileged status, something you should have informed me of when I was eating compost out of a bin as a child. Those who say nothing are complacent in one of the most horrific injustice the world has ever seen. Whether we like to believe or not, we are in a war of ideologies that wish to take your freedoms and liberty away again. As the bastard children of Ishmael seek to destroy the Himmis, the pagan children of Odin, and extinguish the literary Christ virtue that we based our freedoms upon. To attack what we hold most dear in the Magna Carta and most Western countries' constitutions are being set upon by the words of peace and the hand of hateful destruction. An ideology with the objective of exchanging our false rape accusation culture for a legal structure of a true rape culture, to molest and enslave women and female children in the most horrific ways imaginable. And the halls of the hypocritical echo chamber of Tumblr falls silent, forcing virtuous men to be an ethical compass by relinquishing their safety to speak out in your defense against a very real threat to your freedom, so you can cluck your tongues deceitfully, making Christianity by the standards of the World Health Organization and the UN the most persecuted religion in the world. If you disbelieve, step out of your whitewashed hypocritical safe space and have a look for yourself, and wonder what else they lied to you about. This is a world of doublespeak and hypocrisy, where a president will quote discredited studies, fabricated statistics that he doesn't even believe in, to suck in the clueless feminist favor just to salvage his popularity and protect an administration that had no ethical reservation in censoring the French president. These are the symptoms of the sick world that is axiomatic with Calhoun Utopia Armageddon experiment, where children are sacrificed to satisfy a sick liberal regressive delusion of progress by the censorship of truth, inflicted on the young in a way that only can be described as Unit 731-like, that only Josef Mengele could feel comfortable about carrying out. We're only beginning to see the ramifications of these insanities, and we truly don't understand the damage that has been done. They call me cheeky, Coulson cheeky bastard. Log March the 12th, 1998. What makes me the old guard, a remnant left over from when our enemies were not ourselves, when secrets were benign, and they did not target the Western freedoms or liberties that we hold dear. When Orwellian was a reference, not a way of life. I am here to cooperate with you, to judge things according to the scientific method, in seeking truth as it is defined in philosophy and awareness, rather than seeking for confirmation bias like the hypocritical and agenda news channels do. Committed to paying full attention to the man behind the curtain and the methodology they use to fabricate evidence. It is cheeky bastard which will have no face because academic discourse should not be owed to an individual, but to know the actions of the enlightened individuals. I have been requested to create a complete web series on my written academic works and my comments on channel threads. Because in the last 2 years the YouTube community has been plagiarizing and peddling other people's ideas and arguments as their own, including mine, to be repackaged as somebody else's videos to make money. YouTube has become a hotbed of dishonesty and radical ideology because nobody reads anymore to call them on it. I am not here to personally shame them, but I am here to refute the babble of the echo chamber that has become media and YouTube. The vacuous drivel that is trying to be passed off as intellectual because it does not meet the criteria of being academic. Your enlightenment should be yours, an ode to your thoughts and scientific discovery, not the revenue of an individual with 100,000 followers. As pseudo-intellectualism no longer has meaning, as it is only used by the pseudo-intellectuals, and has become a malignancy that has metastasized to include every part of our existence, that includes our so-called science or academic discovery, where an individual's popularity dictates the validity of statements accepted by faith, rather than an honesty or integrity, where our culture has an ideological stranglehold on us, where a paradigm has greater power than reality, where personal experience is taken more serious than a mathematically significant representative sample. We are all too familiar with the vacuous drivel coming from the uneducated and intentionally ignorant, who wish to feel important by making a video, to comment on things they don't understand, and to parrot and plagiarize. I am here to remind you that details are missed because of the rush of life. That the definition of citation needed means not a book by a pop star, but the peer-reviewed based in academic integrity. The ones that are truthful, so they are belittled and bullied into censorship. This channel is not about finances, but the support of indiscriminate knowledge, objective study and research that cannot be distorted because it's independent of any institute. To exercise your right to know the truth and all the information, not just enough to skew your opinion. Why should Cheeky Bastard host these discussions is because of multiple university degrees. What you won't have to take my word for it, as it will become apparent that under the call sign Cheeky Bastard I worked as a unique multidisciplinary consultant in diagnostics and human information securities. The practice of deception recognitions, kinesics, voice biometrics, paralanguage and all psychological sciences, medical science and technology engineering that leaves nothing in life to the imagination anymore. The opportunities to work with multispectral government agencies, privileged to their procedures, confidences and actions. I am now suffering from chronic and acute neuropathic pain from a non-correctable injury to the peripheral and central nervous system, an illness that has a 98% suicide rate. So it is important to me to contribute to society and to defy the odds, because with knowledge comes responsibility. I only wish to open the eyes of the average person whom do not have the time or the information to be aware of the material motives, the insidious corruption and working propaganda which seeks to indoctrinate you and make you complacent. This is why Cheeky supports MGTOW, Gamergate, Anonymous and to inspire thought, to question, or to even action, to those who will feel strongly enough to act. This is your time to make a difference. You are the 99%, and you deserve the knowledge of what is withheld, how your life is run, your nation is run, how you're manipulated, and the implications that has for your life, your future. This is why cheeky bastard has no face and wants no glory, for our time is short. And in hope to answering the question, is there something you have missed? End communication.
I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin. I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see.